Oh,
Yeah.
So the market's not good right now?
No, he's very picky.
Unfortunately, in this situation, I don't have to care about the market not
Yeah.
doing good because I got enough to retire, so.
You look at my 20, 30 years of experience, you don't fit.
So Naveen, you work for Microsoft?
Yeah.
I used to work for State Street
I did
long back, but left that job, started my own IT services focused on Power Platforms.
I can give you.
Oh, you?
No, I do.
Hmm.
My friend also.
I'm a computer
Okay.
programmer, I'm too old to do
But he came.
software.
Okay.
So he's doing Dynamics
At least
365.
100 years away.
Okay, I would like to connect.
Yeah, so and also he's doing for project for Australia.
Okay.
We do RFC and everything. RFC.
No?
So
Is he local?
no, not local.
Where is he?
In Hyderabad.
Hyderabad.
So he was in here.
I don't
he left to
I don't
India,
think.
Okay.
but he worked for
Make it work.
12 years. Microsoft.
Oh,
So solution.
not yet.
Okay.
Now he's doing
I don't
Australia.
think they'll ever make it.
Okay, nice.
So he's
You
doing.
think so?
No, I definitely would like to connect with him. Why don't we connect on LinkedIn
I
Yeah,
first?
don't
sure.
see how you
Let's
can
do that
that
now.
stuff.
Oh, no.
I'm a Microsoft 25 years. I'm a developer.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
Where do you live?
it's pretty tough right now.
Yeah, 5 minutes from here.
Keep it
It's
weird.
completely
No,
over.
I know.
It's
I
completely
started my
over.
life in Burlington.
Like
Oh,
everything.
I'm Bedford.
Yeah, I live in Westford now.
Oh, Westford. Okay.
Yeah,
Little
see,
town, right? Temple. Temple.
We actually was like,
Groton, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually does anything.
You go to Groton?
Yeah.
Right now, they're very far away from having anything.
Hello. Then Malama.
Have anything useful.
Get it working in room.
That's actually good.
If they get it working,
I
it's
have my
gonna be
real
tried.
estate license, and I'm reciprocating it up
You're
here.
not gonna keep things.
One of the biggest issues that clients running into is actually being able to find someone to do the work.
You never know.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's
things
the
that
biggest
happen
problem,
around
is even if they
here.
have insurance,
Yeah.
they're still
I-
looking.
I sent you the request, yeah.
Job, because once you cut them a check, even if it's 50%, they
But
can
in
go.
any case, my brain doesn't work that way, so.
Neither do I, but I looked at it and said, ah, this is way over my head.
He's focusing on both.
He is also,
Dynamic instrument.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Does he have anyone here who is helping him, or he's doing it from India?
We have other colleagues.
Hmm.
No,
They say
he laid out. He had
5 years or less.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and,
12 years.
you've seen my self-driving car that I
Now
bought
he got a
in
job.
2020, just like they
6 months. Now he
found.
got a job. 6 months.
Okay.
Now he's doing. So he's focusing on.
Remember that?
Oh, he's not, does not have his own thing. He's working for someone.
How about
Yeah,
you
he's
do
working
your
for someone,
fusion
but he
plan?
can help.
Okay.
Got it.
So-
I'm looking
Shall
for
I give
someone
you a
like that.
quote from?
Normally, I would just let
Let
us keep networking. We usually spend the first part of this meeting networking, and towards the end. But today is a little bit different because I do have a hard stop at 7:00, so we'll probably start to wind things down at at quarter of. And so, with that said, I'll get. I'd like to get started.
So will we have a round, like introduction kind of thing, or like?
Yeah, I think that could be great to do an introduction. Also, just so folks know, we have 2 chapters now. There's the Boston chapter, and there's also a chapter in Chicago. And we are looking to continue to grow the group, including internationally. And so just so you know, there is a stream that I've just turned on for the Chicago group so that they can participate in our meeting. So they'll just be observing and listening in on the meeting. The camera is just focused on me, so they'll see the screen and they'll be able to see my face during the meeting. And I love the idea of doing introductions. Somebody else requested this at our last meeting, and so we went around the room and did introductions, and it seemed to work really well. And since part of this, the mission of the group is to network and help grow the industry, if you will, or interest in the industry, I think makes complete sense. So maybe what we can do for an agenda is I'll start by introducing the group, and I can introduce myself, and then we could go around the room, and then after the introductions go into the presentation. Okay, so a little bit about the group, and also for those that are joining on the stream or watching afterwards, thanks for taking the time. So a little bit about the group. Again, we have multiple chapters and we're growing. Boston is our, is where we started and our flagship group. The best way to get information is we do have a website and Linktree. If you go to bosshug.com, it's going to redirect you to an Azure website. It's right. We host it on our we sponsor it on our Azure tenant. And so if you visit here, there's different information on the group. And then most importantly, I think the place to get the most updated information for meetups is the link to the meetup page. And I'm sure that's probably how most people here found the group. But you can see we're well established on LinkedIn. We're approaching 700 members. We're 4+ stars, just starting to leak into 5 stars. So I'll also say that too, if you do attend a couple of meetings and you find them valuable, if you could take time to, just do a quick review on Meetup, that would be great. I think we've had over, just a little bit more on some numbers. I was just looking today, we're over 120, maybe over 130. I don't remember exactly events so far. So we've, many of them were during COVID. We did a lot of remote events, and then we started in person about a year ago, and we've had over 120 events so far. The purpose of the group is to network and is really to try to get new folks into the industry. But full disclosure, we're trying to actually narrow that focus even more this year. So, for example, we've heard people in the industry leadership, especially in nursing, but really across the board, complain about the lack of folks that are interested in clinical informatics today. And so that's an example of where I feel we could focus even more instead of just, for the first couple of years, we're like, okay, we just wanted get more new people into the industry. But I feel like we can refine that more. And so we are in the process of doing that. We have an advisory group that we've put together that's helping to steer that conversation as well. Also worth noting, if you are in town on Friday, the 27th, so this is the other Microsoft office in Cambridge. There's a Community Days AI event. This is something else we do. So we host these one-day events. We actually had a Microsoft Community Days Healthcare Edition. As a matter of fact, it was the first one, and it was here at this office in Burlington. And so that was a full-day event. We had speakers fly in from not just all over the U.S., but all over the world, and put together the event. So this one is similar. This one is Community Days, but it's focused on AI. So it's AI Community Days. It's at the Research Center in Cambridge. The link here, it shows that the registration is closed. But if there's somebody in this group that's interested in going, if you want to just ping me, I'm actually speaking at the event on Friday. And as a matter of fact, I'll touch on one of the topics I'm speaking at this event tonight as part of the presentation. So, okay, I'm sorry, I went too far. I was supposed to just introduce the group, and I already went into the event for that before we finish the introduction. So that's the group and our purpose. But one last thing about the group is, so we meet the last Wednesday of every month for the most part. There's some travel complexities next month. So long story short, November will be our next meeting, and I'll make sure we keep you well informed with that. So that's the group. So now about me, Paul Swider. I've been working with business information systems at Microsoft Software most of my adult life, like just, pretty much right out of university. It's been about 30 years now. And what happened was I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, and the only big company that worked on technology in my area was a company called IDX. And so for people that have been in healthcare for a while, you might remember IDX. They basically created the first scheduling program for hospitals and for the OR room. And long story short, they grew into a $1 billion healthcare company. They actually, some of those folks launched Allscripts, and then they were purchased by GE Healthcare. And that's so now up in South Burlington, Vermont, there's a big GE Healthcare building, but that's actually the history. It used to be this company called IDX. And so that's sort of how I didn't plan to get into clinical informatics. It just sort of happened that way. I was into business information software, and I think what really appealed to me early on was the mission critical nature of it. Like I felt like a lot of what we were doing, especially at the time, it just seemed mission critical, and it felt like it allowed me to take my career, to another level from that perspective. And so, long story short, I ended up sticking more or less in the healthcare industry. I say more or less because throughout my career, I've done some other stuff in other industries. But if I had to give a percentage, I would say about 75% of what I've done has been in healthcare. And and so I'm the founder and organizer of the group. I'm the founder of a startup company out of Beverly. We have a Physician Experience Copilot that we're working with Microsoft startups on and bringing to market. And that's about the group, and that's about me. Do you want to start? I'm just going to pick on you because we'll go around clockwise.
Logan Hicks, 18 years experience as a multidiscipline senior principal architect across 7 disciplines, full stack development, CNO, OCO, and PICO operations, doing both federal and nation state operations against foreign adversaries. Heavy into GovCon and the unhealthcare business, also very much so in the deconstruction business. But I'm also currently and actively interviewing up here in the Boston area for multiple companies to include the VA. So it's a meet and greet here for me and meeting new people, networking, and maybe learning more about the healthcare industry.
Nice. Welcome.
James Khan, licensed to coach. I'm just kidding. I actually doing a lot of data management and analytics transformation consulting. Another word for it is I'm employed. I'm actually looking for projects or a permanent position where I'm actually using all the analytics, advanced or not, and data management, whether you talk about ISS, SaaS, whatever, whatnot. I love to take whatever I learned in all these years and apply.
John, I think I write software, not very much anymore, because I'm now old and looking at retirement or spending retirement, and then I come here because I find this interesting.
I'm Musan Ram. I've been in IT in over 25 plus years. Last 10, 12 years predominant in the healthcare biotech side of things. I've been with Moderna for a couple of years and went permanent with them after consulting for several years. And one of the things that kind of interests me here is that to understand more about the startup hub, because when I was consulting, there's always some ideas that I wanted to kind of explore. And I know there's a lot of potential in the healthcare and life sciences. So here I am.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Naveen Kalwa. I'm a senior software engineer. I'm working for healthcare, Microsoft. In the past, I have 20 plus years experience. Most of the experience in investment banking. Right now, I'm in healthcare. I'm a hands-on full stack developer.
And the sponsor of our group. So we need there's a new process where we need somebody to actually be here in person for the meetings. It's not good enough anymore just to sponsor. So really an extra thank you for Naveen, because he takes extra time out every month to sit in on the meeting for us. So,
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Naveen, for that.
So I'm Jason. I'm co-founding a startup with Sean that's called Primus. It's in the construction space. And I'm just here to network with people that are more technical than myself and just learn.
I'm Sean. I'm also co-founding Primus, and the reason I'm coming here, I learned so much last time from Paul and Naveen, and I thought I'd get some more information and come back, and that's why I'm.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Sal Tessito. I do software consulting to medical device companies, embedded system stuff, and some Microsoft stuff for control panels, for the stuff, or for testing applications. I'm also doing a coordinated care mobile application startup under Microsoft for startups. So I'm interested in hearing about your experience with that, Bob.
Yeah.
And I might have some questions.
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi,
My name is Aditya Chawar. So I've been in mostly fintech industry, working for State Street Global Advisors for a long, long time. Uh, since 2019, I've worked in a startup called Advisor 360. Left that job last year to start on my own to provide IT services and solutions. Uh, we are currently working on like, setting up a power platform practice, and that's where I think I saw your page. You were associated with power platform
Yeah,
before,
I've
right?
actually done quite a bit with Power Platform and Dynamics and stuff.
Dynamic, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we
my,
built part of our platform on it.
yeah. So me and my partners, we have been like I've been in State Street, but they have been in Cognizant for many, many years. Collectively, like we all have 25 plus years experience.
Okay.
So the idea is to start like use Power Platform as an anchor,
Yep.
but build on it, get into
Sure.
fabrics and apps like up the stack on Microsoft. So current focus is Microsoft platforms, but we want to go up the chain.
Good for
This is
you.
a big name.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a team in India now, 4 people that those are working on Power Platform. We do have a client, construction client, who for whom we are building something. So we can talk more like. Okay.
Great.
So
Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on your new endeavor.
yes,
You have to
thank you.
have to keep us posted as well. I think Power Platform is a great anchor. I think if for any other reason, it's before all this modern AI stuff, all we heard about was low code, right? And how we're getting low code, and I guess AI brought low code in a totally different perspective now, right? Because almost any programming language can sort of be low code now, right? Like it's not like you have to spend a ton of time writing code anymore. You just have to know what it means and fix it and make sure it'll run and test and all that. So, but then what happened is, and I noticed this more and more recently, like a lot of the business AI stuff from Microsoft is falling under Power Platform. And so it's just a really great anchor from that perspective, because it's a great way to anchor yourself into the business AI space as well.
That's the idea. That's where we are heading towards. Like we really feel using this combination of low code, no code, and the open AI platform of Microsoft.
Yeah,
there's a lot that can be accomplished. And we'll just mature.
I agree. That's powerful. So it sounded like there were a couple of people that were interested in the Microsoft startups topic. That we got a lot of interest in it when we did it last time, and so what we decided to do was a part 2. And I don't know if you remember, but I told you that actually I was getting ready to go to India, and I was going to give that same presentation in India. And since then, so I have done that. I traveled it was my first time to India. It was amazing trip. We've been working with some folks over there, and what's interesting is I've actually met them in person many times, but it's always in another country, because the head of the team, he also speaks at conferences. So every time I would see him and we would be in person, we'd be in another country speaking at a thing. But this was the first time I actually got to meet him and his team, and so that went well. But the best part of the trip from my perspective was when we did a community day. So it was a 1-day community day, similar like to one that's going to be at Microsoft Friday. And it was at a university in Salem University, which is in the southern central part. And that's where I actually did the talk on startups. And so, I'm here to report it just went really well. I think one of the things that really just warmed my heart about that session is it was so well received by the university students, because this university is it's a very technical school. As a matter of fact, just by coincidence, I met the founder of AI for Good was actually there doing a whole nother event out of Toronto, which, as you know, is a big AI hub. And with here, again, this was in Salem, India, and central India. It just seemed like such a small world. But I understand now why. Why now? Because at university they have and they just have just a great level of education statistically. When you look around India, I didn't know this, but apparently in southern India especially, there's just really great statistics there. And so they focus on business too. So it was an MBA school and a tech school. And so my message was, it was essentially the same message I gave here about startups and explaining to them what the startups program was. But I framed it a little bit differently. I explained to them that all you needed was an idea, that because a lot of people, they think to get into the startups program, you need a team right away, or you need, a product or something. But really, just to get started on level one, it literally just takes a legitimate idea and, an email address, right? Or actually not even, I think LinkedIn, which requires the email address. And so that was my favorite part of the session, is just that it was so well, that particular topic was so well received. And I guess if I were to build on the topic today, I maybe if you want to do like some questions and answers, I'm happy to talk about our experience. We have graduated to level 4 at this time. And so one of the things we're working on, actually, I think I have a couple of slides that go through this too.
So Paul,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, since I was not there in the first one.
Yeah.
So this startup thing is like a Microsoft program where you can go in, like you can just brief synopsis or
Yeah, 100%.
like what this is. Yeah.
The best way to do it is just Microsoft startups. And I always use Microsoft startups as sort of like slang. What I mean, or like an umbrella term. What I mean by that is the name of the program is actually called the Founders Hub. And so there's Microsoft Startup is a group at Microsoft that does a lot of stuff with startups. And one of those things is the Founders Hub. And the Founders Hub is the one that I talked about in my last presentation. It's the one where there's 4 different levels. You can get up to, actually, there's a new program now where I've read up to 300,000 in Azure credits. Like there's like a follow-up type program. And so one of the things I like about this is it uses LinkedIn. Well, I say that, and then I don't have my password cached. So let me hold on a second.
Look at this guy. He's doing Microsoft stuff on AWS.
Yeah, we like all clouds, Sorry, where am I trying to go here? I'm signed into LinkedIn. Okay. I needed to just switch a browser where I was already signed in. I don't remember my LinkedIn password. So what I really like about this is that there's again, getting to the first level. So this is the Founders Hub. So when you log in, this is what you see. We've actually completed 10 out of 10 of the tasks, but they've extended us for a year. And so for some reason, in their system, some of them drop off after some time. But when you first come in here, you'll have, for level 1, there's so many steps that you'll have to complete, maybe 5 or 6 steps, for example. Here's an example list of the tasks, so you have to get started with Azure. You have to have a subscription. You need to, verify your business name and what state your business is registered in, and then verify your domain, update your business email. And by the way, all of this was done to get up through level 4. Like I'm pretty sure for level 1, I'm not sure that you even need to verify your business name, like with the state, but don't quote me on that, but that it's possible. And then you get to a certain point, like once you get from level 3 and you're trying to get to level 4, then the most important, your focus becomes a demo video, because you need to prove product market fit. And so the demo video is a big part of that, because the startup team will look at it, and then if they think that you have some product market fit, then they'll start to introduce you to some folks. So for example, here's what this looked like for us. When we actually went into Founders Hub, what we pitched to them was that we had built this product with a large hospital system over the past decade. And for years, I was just too busy. I didn't want anything to do with it. Long story short, we decided to turn it into a company and a product and take it to market. And so we pitched it, and they they really liked it. Because we already had a product and we already had customers, they put us on level 3. And what was interesting was since we were on level 3 and we already had a product, one of our first tasks was to start to think about product market fit. And this is the big test, right? You have to prove that there's a market for your idea, that you have product market fit. And then I would say the second biggest thing after that is you have to prove that there's ROI, that people are going to pay for that product market fit, right? And that's what Microsoft is sort of testing. And by the way, I'm pretty sure all these cloud incubators work the same way. Like Google has one now, right? AWS has one. Everybody's trying to support the AI community, or as I like to say, the small business community, because that's really what's happening, right? A lot of these folks are small businesses working in technology, etc. So I'm pretty sure they all work the same way, but you get to a point where you have to prove product market fit. And what I had noticed was that when we had first started building this product, there was nobody doing what we were doing on the administration and operations side of healthcare. But over time, like competitors started encroaching a little bit. Like there were some big firms that, like, I could see where they could very easily do what we were doing, for the most part. And then what happened was, so I started to think, it was really top of mind. And then what happened was, because we were in the startup program, we got early notice of OpenAI and some of the Copilot stuff, but it wasn't even called Copilot at the time. It was called semantic kernel, which I'll show you some of this stuff now, which is actually what they ended up building the Copilot on, Microsoft Copilot, etc. And that's what we built on. And so what happened was, when I saw what they had put together with ChatGPT and with OpenAI, and I saw what Microsoft was, prepared to do with it, I knew right away that was an answer for our product market fit. I knew if we took the semantic kernel stack and all the new LLM stuff and basically put it right on top of that 10-year body of work that we already had, that would give us what we need for product market fit, green fit, and let us really exponentially lead, anything that was even coming close to a competitor. And that's some advice I've been giving people lately as well, is that, because I think a lot of times when people talk about modern AI, a lot of the conversation is centered around building something, new and trying to do something revolutionary or something. But I think people are really, some people, they're underestimating the fact that you can, again, take something that you already have and then make it 10x better with the technology. And for us, actually, what we found is it was actually from the beginning a great decision, because we can have realistic conversations with the hospitals now about what our platform does and not even talk about the AI. Like, we save the Copilot for the last part of the demo. We show them our slides about how we get stuff from different, basically data engineering, et cetera, the whole nine. And then finally we're like, okay, and by the way, there's this Copilot thing in AI, that we can lay on top of that. And so that's how our product was born. So our product is a Physician Experience Copilot. Now, what's really cool is we also got, I don't know if it was lucky. I'd like to think it was some strategic decisions. But what I mean by that is we also decided for this go round to focus only on operations and administration. So at this time, our Copilot, it's really focused on that part of the hospital. And more specifically, hospitals have a section or a department or a group. Sometimes it's just 2 people. Sometimes it's in HR, but it's called provider services. And basically, they're there to do everything they can do to support all the providers. Providers are the doctors, nurses, anybody that touches a patient. So they'll help you with anything, whatever it is. Like, you're having a problem at home, your pay, your vacation, your education, your continuing education, your career path, right? Think of that type of stuff. Making sure that they use the phrase billing at the top of your license. So if you're licensed, for example, to be a brain surgeon, and you want to make sure you're always billing what a brain surgeon should be billing, right? I mean, we do the same thing in technology, right? In theory, we should be trying to bill at the top of our certification, if you will, right? And so that's sort of that's the space that we play in. So getting the product market fit, one of the reasons why we've been embraced by Microsoft is we found that we actually complement the Nuance Copilot very well. So Microsoft has a Copilot, DAX Copilot. It falls under Nuance, the Nuance name brand? Is it still its own company? Is it just a brand, or are we not even supposed to say
No, it's a
Nuance
brand.
anymore? It is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a DMO. There is a DMO product.
Okay, yeah.
So it's advanced version of DMO.
Okay.
That's
So DAX is a product of Nuance, which
Yeah.
and but Microsoft owning Nuance obviously is a Copilot.
Because recently the Epic they customized the Epic.
You're right. Yeah.
Epic they customized the Epic and Nursing Copilot. It's
Okay.
a part of the DAX Copilot.
Yeah. But you guys are also planning on having it be able to connect to other EHRs eventually, right? Is that true? Yeah. So what's interesting though is the problem that they solve, and what I really love about the work Nuance is doing is they've done some legitimate work in reducing the burden in hospitals using ambient AI with this. And so essentially what I mean by that is over the past years, we've burdened the doctors with computer systems. If you talk to a doctor, most of them will say that the biggest reason they're burned out is all the paperwork, computer systems, electronic health record, and all of that. We even created legislation called meaningful use to track not only how the doctors were using it in the hospitals. I'm sure some of you know this story. So what Nuance has done is they've introduced the ambient AI in their Copilot. So what it looks like is you essentially, you can start the app on your device and then you start interacting with the patient. And what it will do is, at least where it's at now, I haven't looked at it in a couple of months, so forgive me, Naveen, if I'm selling you short of that. But what it will do is it will reach into Epic, start the encounter, start the process of beginning the note for the provider, and again, in the spirit of lifting that burden. So and my point to that story is they fall more on the clinical side, right? So they're integrating with the electronic health record and focusing on creating the encounter, creating the notes, etc. Because we're focused on the administration and the operations side, Microsoft feels okay introducing us to into their existing customer base because there's a complementary fit. And that's the story of our product market fit and how we got to where we are today. So that just means then you get on to solving the next problem, which is sales. So you start hiring salespeople now.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So the Copilot that you have built, it's focused on this particular segment.
Yeah.
Is the design and architecture of that reusable in other places?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things I want to do after we finish this discussion about startups is just have a quick conversation on the framework that Microsoft uses to build products and for Copilot AI products and Copilot. And so I'm planning on showing some of that here in just a minute. Yeah.
One question as well. I remember you said you were in talks with like a big hospital and
Yeah.
you got it, and I know you were at level 3 at that point. My thing is, this might help me as well. How often are you adding new tools from Microsoft that might pivot what you were doing, or are you staying basically on the same line, but with some of the tools they have, like you talked about the Nuance and AI? How often are you adding stuff to improve your startup, or are you just leaving it the same?
Yeah, no, so that's a really great question. And I think the way I would answer it is this, is like, not to sound cliche, but I feel like, especially because of this industry and the technology, that we have to be really, really flexible, And so while obviously we're comfortable with our core product, and our core platform, etc., but now going to market, for example, there's so many things like we can integrate with PeopleSoft as well, which is a big platform for a lot of large hospitals, etc. So I don't know if this is helping. I'm just trying to explain the thought process that we went through.
I would personally recommend against adding tools or capabilities unless you have a justification for it. It's going to increase your technical debt, increase your OpEx without adding any actual value add.
No, I agree with that. The reason I was asking, I've been in talk with many investors, and everyone I've spoken to has a different opinion.
Yeah.
I haven't met the same one. One says, "Oh, I like all the tools." The next one says, "Hey, stay simple."
Yeah.
They say, "Well, why don't you just use your other company?" I go, "Look, I haven't met one." That's why someone who's actually farther ahead than me, I wanted to know how you go about it.
We're at the point now where it's like it's just write a check. You know what I mean? Like we have our platform, our Copilot, we purposely build it to be agnostic. Like we love Azure, we love Microsoft, and that's what we build on. But we also acknowledge that healthcare, these are super complex organizations that many of them have multiple cloud vendors, right? And they have, a lot of people will use the phrase on-prem, but I would use the phrase private cloud, because in all fairness, a lot of these hospital systems, what they sort of think about on-prem is really evolved over the past 10 years to private cloud and then connecting to public cloud or clouds,
And
right?
a lot of them
More
are
than
in
one way.
hosted colos. And
Yeah.
so they may say on-prem, but they're not actually on-prem. Their data center might be in Virginia and they're in Boston.
So we acknowledge that, but to your point, it's like my view on it is we're trying to be flexible. So if we hear it, like to me, it makes sense that, especially because we're competing with like the billion-dollar companies, right? So right away, early, we were like, oh, okay, let's get some messaging out about PeopleSoft, because we know nobody will have that for a while, right? And in all fairness, we were already consuming data from PeopleSoft, right? So we came up with a product sheet around that, right? And now and so we do that often. Like I think we're literally up to like 12 different product sheets right now. And it's all the same product, but it's just how you could use it in different configurations. Meaning like, so it's a Physician Experience Copilot. And Naveen was getting at this even with the Microsoft Copilot. Like out of the gate, they integrate with Epic, right? So out of the gate, we're integrated with PeopleSoft, but we also have another product sheet for Athena Health, for example, because there's this whole mid-sized market. And actually, in all fairness, Athena's gotten large, and they run some large hospitals too now. But so that's another potential market, right? So it's the same Physician Experience Copilot, but the product sheet is how can you use it on top of Athena Health, for example.
So you just have like 12 different pitch decks for whoever shows up, or any presentation?
No. The pitch deck is always the same. And by the way, on our pitch deck is targeted just at business development, not at VC funding right now. So we don't have any finance slides in our pitch deck. Our pitch deck is designed for CMO, CFO of hospitals, for Microsoft startups, etc. So we're not going into when I say pitch deck, that's what I mean by pitch deck. It's maybe a product pitch deck is a better way to think about it, right? Like where our product and where our company is. And that doesn't change, right? We have our team story, the story that I just told you. We have our Physician Experience Copilot. But this gentleman asked a great question before I started speaking about this, which was, after I spoke about it, which was, can you build on this or adapt it for other industry, right? And of course we can. We could plug our Copilot, put it on top of any data set in any industry, right? It's really just a branding effort at that point, right? But then we start straying away from, remember I told you one of the things we did well is we took something that we had already built and then we put something on top of it. So there's that. But I guess how I would end that is where we are right now is we're focused more on trying to narrow in and be focused and niche, not the opposite. But we just find we have to be flexible. Like if we hear of something that's so obvious, like PeopleSoft in healthcare administration, right? It's like one of the biggest ERP systems for hospitals and hospital systems. And for some reason, it didn't even occur to me to brag about the fact that we were already doing it because we were so caught up in Microsoft startups, right? Maybe this is what you're getting at with different tools and brands and whatnot.
Because I agree with you. I want to be niche, but every time half of them love it and half of them say exactly, well, you could use this, you could add this, and
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think I've been in that position of more than once in my career. And one of the things that helps me to always remember when I start to get that feeling is my favorite strategy, which is whenever you're building something, build it for a couple of friends and get it right for your friends. And by the way, your friends can be like my best customer, you know what I mean? Microsoft, you know what I mean? A pilot group or whatever. And then worry about all the other stuff like scale and all that. Like it was good advice that I got early on. It's way too easy, and I've done this many times myself. You get caught up out of the gate thinking about how you're going to scale something or grow it, and for me that approach just doesn't work well. But if I just narrow it down and I legitimately build it for myself or for some friends, and then it's going to be good if you're really meeting a need that, right?
You know, you just answered my question. I already have like 20 clients on my other business, so I'm just going to actually build it for them. No, that you just said that.
Yeah.
My recommendation is be like Ferrari, not like Rolls Royce. That's why Ferraris are more in demand and they sell for more. Yeah, sure, Rolls Royce sells great jet engines, but how many people knew they actually sold jet engines?
Just learned that right now.
That's kind of the point. Ferrari does one thing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Be Ferrari.
Paul, building your Copilot on top of Microsoft Azure services, and you're allowing your customer to interact with these services. Do you have to, is there a concern about limiting the amount of Copilot that each customer gets so they're not, outsizing, consuming service that you've got wired in? How do you control the cost of the back end to your Copilot?
Yeah, this is a great question. So we,
Or do you even?
yeah, that's probably a better way to think about it, is that we don't really focus on that too much. And here's why. Let me explain that, because that probably doesn't make sense when I first say it that way. It sounds sort of funny, but
Well, if you're on Microsoft Startups and you've got free credits, I could say.
but no, it's not even that. Like so what we build our Copilot on top of is semantic kernel.
Okay.
And that this is the same. So semantic kernel is a software SDK from Microsoft, and it's available in 2 different languages right now, Python and .NET. And semantic kernel is basically, are you familiar with LangChain and stacks like LangChain?
Yeah.
And orchestration and agentic algorithms and all that stuff? That semantic kernel is basically Microsoft's version of that. So think agentic algorithm, scheduling, orchestration, chain of thought, right? So, so for example, GPT-4, what are they calling it now? The one that just came out that has better chain of thought reasoning this week. 4.5. It looks funny. It's 4.0 and then something. But anyway, the most recent one. But in that one, what's interesting is they've added they've taken chain of thought to another level. So chain of thought is basically, I think of it as sort of like dynamic functions. So chain of thought is where the language model is trying to figure out what function it should call to do its job. And the problem is that the language model doesn't do all of that, any of that, right? Like you need to have a framework like semantic kernel that persists stuff to memory. It knows the chat history, it's caching, it's deciding what to send off to the LLM, etc. Right? So that is the role that the semantic kernel plays. And so the semantic kernel, again, it's an SDK. It's written in .NET, or there's a version in .NET, there's a version in Python. My understanding is that the Microsoft Copilots, I can't say all of them because, quite frankly, some of them were cobbled together quickly in the last 12 months. But I will say the modern, the newer ones, like the 365 Copilot, etc., they're built on this framework as well. So we made and so here's a couple cool things about this framework. Out of the box, it connects to multiple large language models. There's a small subset. It's basically the same subset that's in Azure AI services, more or less, give or take a few. But you can write your own connector, and you can connect to any model that you want to, including a custom model, etc. So on the LLM side of this framework, it's very flexible. So I like that about it. Again, getting back to hospitals being complex environments and having more than one cloud vendor, that was important to us. And then, so that's on the LLM side. And then, yeah, and so that I guess I'll just stop there. That's some of the reasons why we decided to build on semantic kernel. So the reason why I pulled this up is there were some announcements made about semantic kernel. And by the way, there's a great Microsoft Learn site, and there's a repo for semantic kernel. There's plenty of information on it. There's an entire team now. There's a program manager for the semantic kernel. There's product people. Like it's a real first class. Actually, I would say very significant component to their modern AI efforts, if you will. And so one of the things that I picked up on in this past week is that there was a new version that was released both for Python and .NET. And one of the things that's available that they're talking about is, well, they say new function calling, but I think what they mean is we've always been able to call functions and do chain of thought, but I think what they mean by that is that there's, maybe they built on it or made it better. Maybe they really do mean that they did a rip and replace, but I don't think so. But my point is that there were some pretty big announcements, So what we do is we build off of the semantic kernel framework, and then we take updates from their repo as they, more or less, as they become available, and then we have and then we build our Copilot product on top of that, on top of semantic kernel. And so the Copilot, I can show you in our a dev environment running. Essentially, like I said, you can think chat GPT type, interface on top of the large language model. I don't think this should look new to anybody at this point. A couple of things that we're working on now that we're really excited about is improving how the orchestration and the agentic functions are called. And so one of the techniques that we've discovered is, and we learned this from Microsoft, for anybody that's used Microsoft 365 Copilot, you'll probably see the prompt suggestions in PowerPoint and Outlook, etc. And part of the reason for that is because if you let the user select a prompt template, then you can use that to match, for the large language model to match the function. So you could get more accurate, basically, is what it means, right? Because imagine if you have 100 different users typing in, get what's the MD population workload, for example. People are just going to phrase that a bunch of different ways, right? But here with the prompt template. So then, of course, once you did that, then we realized you need a whole framework for that, because different people in different roles are going to need different prompts, etc. And yeah, this has been up and running for a while. I didn't even. Hopefully, this connect. I probably should have did a quick test. I think it's just waking up, so it might take forever because I haven't used this in like a week. So
Paul, you could have an application that maybe had a couple buttons, and below those buttons that acted like predefined filters, and below those could be your prompts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And so you could use the LLM to data mine or do whatever, but you're controlling the how it works.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we did it, because if you think about it, really at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're using the large language model to figure out what transact SQL to run, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what it is. And the LLM gives us the ability to finally know what the user really wants, right? Like the user can ask a question in sort of natural language, but then the tricky part is you have to take that natural language question and figure out, okay, how do I make sure I trigger the right function, or not me, because AI is supposed to do it, like not me. I keep saying, how do I make sure I trigger it? But remember, I'm not triggering it. I'm just giving it to the LLM. And the way it works is each of these functions, I don't have the code open now, but I could show you, but each of these functions is tagged with the description. And that's why you have these, that's the magic of the prompts here, because what you do is you make those match the description of the function. So then you really increase your likelihood that proper function will get called with that prompt selection, if you will. And really, at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? You're putting a layer on top of, in this use case, in this particular use case that we're talking about, you're putting a layer on top of analytics. And so the other thing, so then a lot of people will say, okay, well, we know what that is. That's RAG, blah, blah, blah. We hear everybody's talking about that at every conference, etc., blah, blah, blah. But I will challenge you this. Look at including Microsoft, go to any event and look at the RAG sessions, and almost every one of them is on non-structured content, meaning it's on documents, contracts, PDF files, some type of unstructured content that they can crawl and search with Azure AI search, and then they can get embeddings, from it to work with it right. That's just regular RAG. But what's far more challenging, or at least what we're finding, is doing that same thing, but with structured data. So data in a relational database, or data in a document database, for example. But for us, we're most interested in structured data and relational databases.
Well, structured data is going to be the way to go anyways, because as everyone knows, when you're dealing with unstructured data, it becomes harder and harder to manage the more data you have.
Yeah.
And so it's going to become unmanageable at some point, to where most RAG systems simply can't process anything within a reasonable time frame.
But we do need both, just to be
You
clear.
want both,
Because
yeah.
so for example, here's a great example, like a couple of real world things that we've already uncovered. Like, so for example, one of the things that we talked to folks about on the administration side is basically dumping all their documentation for the electronic health record in there.
Yeah.
And so then providers can ask questions of the health documentation, but they're only doing it in the context of the apps that they have, et cetera, right?
And that's why it works well, is because you're effectively segmenting it into each individual silo.
Yeah.
And because of that, each LLM is focused on that one set of unstructured data set. And
Right.
because of that, it runs much better. It's effectively building multiple MongoDBs and leveraging a Spark system to query across all of them.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of probably a lot of reasons for that, but I think that's where I landed on it. And so the other thing you should know is even our chat client. There's a really great chat client called Azure Chat, and that's an open source project as well. And so we essentially, I don't know if we're still using that as our starting point, but we did at last year when we first started doing our MVP and prototyping and whatnot. We may have moved away from it at this time, but
Question, since this is like a physician's experience,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily dealing with some sensitive data, right? Or are you? Or if you are you filtering them out in some ways in any of your layers before it gets persisted and so on?
Yeah. So we are excited to work with secure data, and we do that now. Just to actually, I should be more clear. But what you're really getting at is data that's regulated, right? Like patient data that's controlled by different governments, et cetera. Right? Yeah, HIPAA compliance. And so that's a really interesting question. In theory, it shouldn't be. It is. I'm sorry, I did just read. They made an announcement recently. Yeah. But if you think about it, that doesn't really mean much, because HIPAA compliance is a signature on a paper, right? It's just saying, hey, we're officially partnered with Microsoft, so Microsoft can handle our patient data. So yeah, I think they have the paper that people can sign now, basically, from a logistic perspective, right?
Where's the data that's getting put into your Copilot? Where's that going? Is that getting sucked back into Microsoft?
No, so it's not.
LLM
Yeah.
model,
So
or?
the way that our Copilot is architected, our business data is not used in any way by Microsoft. Part of the reason for that is, remember again what we're doing. We're literally just calling SQL. The only thing we're using the LLM for is to figure out what SQL statements to call. Now, in all fair, we do use it to format the response coming back as well. So we want to be cognizant of that. Now, that was another reason why we decided to stick with operations and administration early on, over a year ago. It was the fact that we had this 10-year body of work that we were already working on. But when the news broke about OpenAI, I was actually at HIMSS and I was listening to people speak, and it reminded me. I was just telling this story earlier, actually, of the PC, because the hospitals was one of the last groups to adopt the PC. And so they were using words like, we'll never use a PC to diagnose a patient. We'll never have a PC. I even remember a doctor saying they would never have a PC in the same room as a patient because it might scare the patient, right? So when I heard, I very quickly said, no, we should build on operations and administration, just like we did back then. Because what you can do is there's so much low-hanging fruit that you can do to streamline on the administration operations side, and then by the time you get going on that, then the doctors normally come around and you can keep doing more. But that was back then. Now it's a different world. Most of the leadership I talk to in healthcare today, when I say healthcare, I mean hospitals and hospital systems. what they'll tell you about the clinical side and clinical data and HIPAA data, they don't want to go near it, and they're just waiting for the vendors. So they want to buy Nuance, DAX Copilot. They want to buy the Epic Copilot. They want the vendor to give them the Copilot, and that's happening. All of them have it, and they're going to all have it soon. So what leadership that I'm seeing at hospital systems is when it comes to the clinical stuff, we're going to wait on the vendors, but we've piqued their interest on the operations and the administration side. And clearly anybody that's in the industry now, like we started with this messaging about a year ago now, and now it feels like just about every Microsoft partner wants to get in on that like niche right now, that healthcare AI sort of niche, if you will. So I don't know if that helps, but just that's some random thoughts. And that's why we're not worried about data. Sorry to finish that, to close that loop, because we're focused on administration operation data. There is secure data. So obviously financial data should be secure, HR data, but we're not dealing with data that's regulated. And as a matter of fact, part of the demo I do here is, you can see it here. We actually have it set up so if you do ask it a clinical question, it'll just go silent. It won't even respond to a clinical question. And so so that's and now of course we have the flexibility. We don't have to go silent. Microsoft is doing some good work with something called MedPrompt for clinical LLMs. There's also another MedPalm, right, is Google, and then Anthropic is doing some work with John Still Labs as well. So all three cloud vendors have, doing clinical work of some sort. It's, it's a pretty open field. So my point is we don't have to go silent. If somebody asks a clinical question and a hospital is using OpenAI and they've got it finely tuned that they feel comfortable using it to answer clinical questions, then we can just redirect that question to that LLM. And that's in part because of the flexibility of the semantic kernel.
Paul, your experience with Microsoft for startups. So when I joined, I was kind of hoping there was going to be more events for people in Microsoft and an opportunity to engage with folks from Microsoft. And I started at level 1, you started at level 3. So your experience, you already had interactions with Microsoft, but am I missing something? It seems like, you go through the hoops, you prove that you can hit these requirements, they'll give you more credits. They have access to their engineering, which is great if you need that, some other learning stuff. But the community aspect, I was kind of hoping to be able to build a relationship with them or some of the other folks in it.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback. They do have, it's a small group. They do have some community folks. The places I've seen them are like at the AI events. Mm-hmm. So they're usually like, for example, when we were working on our product market fit, I was stressed about our demo video. And there was a Microsoft AI tour in Manhattan. And I had multiple reasons to go, but one of the reasons I wanted to go was startups was going to be there. They were going to have a booth. They were hosting an event, even I think afterwards or something. And so I just wanted to get some people. Now, oddly enough, even though it was like really heavy startups event, I couldn't find anybody from startups there. It wasn't until I finally gave up and I just went to the actual booth. When I say I couldn't find anybody, there was a party that, where all the speakers and I think attendees or something like. But I don't know, a big room of people, and you just would have thought there'd be at least some, handful of startup people in there. But I couldn't find one. But they were at the booth. I could find them during the day. I found them at the booth.
Sure.
Similar question in that regard. That years ago I worked for a startup, and I felt in the organization we struggled to find MVP. Because we move back and forth based on the customer need. But the customer X wants this, customer Y wants this. We got to switch, quickly pivot, right? Does the program there kind of help you define the MVP? You may have a grand idea, but that may not be a workable or to go to market. But fine tune it enough to help define the MVP. Something like these guys were probably thinking in that regard.
My experience would be no. because there's not enough interaction between Microsoft and me, right? So one example of that is they want you to set up a business initially at level 1. So I had my consulting business, but I had a new business name for the app I wanted to build. So I put in the new business name, but they said it's not registered anywhere. And I was like, all right. So I gave them the name of my consulting firm because it's registered as an LLC, and everything was fine. But there was no human I could talk to to try and explain.
That's by design, by the way. It is built as a they describe it as a self-guided program, like a self-guided
I kind of
program.
get that, right? Because you probably have a ton of people that are applying to this that they just get in there to program.
But don't forget the expert network, because I actually believe one of the most valuable things we got out of the program so far is the expert network. And so, for example, one of the folks we met is industry lead for the healthcare team, covers the Southeast. He actually had worked in the problem space that we solved over a decade ago before he was at Microsoft. So he knew immediately what we were doing, and knew exactly who to put us in front of to test us, to make sure that we really had something, right? So he set up a meeting with the doctor, and then after that it was 2 different hospitals, and chief medical officers, etc. And but my point is that that was we sent 5 emails to 5 people, and I think 3 out of the 5 responded. Tim responded immediately, and so anyway, how can you even put a price tag on that? Like I'll take that over Azure credits any day, right? Because as an entrepreneur, that's the hardest thing, is getting into those first, especially if you're going after bigger clients, bigger accounts and whatnot.
That's an excellent point, because I've leveraged. They give you access to engineering help also, right?
Yeah, there's engineering, but there's business help in there. Like if you look carefully at the categories, there's sales. I actually did a search last week, because now we're working on sales and business development. And so next up on my task list is to set up some meetings with some of the folks that are, and by the way, the reason why they respond so quickly is it's tied to their KPIs. They don't use the word KPI, they call it something else, but they're supported to do that, and it's tracked internally. It's a super important initiative right now for all cloud vendors, not just Microsoft, but all cloud vendors, especially obviously in the AI space. So don't underestimate that. And if I had questions that you couldn't get answered that were startup specific, try looking for people that are actually in startups up there and ping them through that GUI, because it's got a special process where they get notified and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome. So then, how are we doing with time? Okay, so we should just start to wrap up. So then I think what I would do is I'd like to make one more point that I think will help understand this, but also might help you think of additional opportunities, if you will. And so that's this. If you understand and you're comfortable with everything I showed you tonight, right, that we have these large language models that sit in Azure AI services. There's a framework called semantic kernel that we can use as the middle tier. Think of it as like the business logic, right, that controls the back and forth between any data and large language model. And then you have the chat client, right, that the human is entering the prompts to the LLM. So the point I want to make is that this client doesn't need to be here, and the human doesn't need to be entering the prompts. And this framework that I shared with you, semantic kernel, it's not only how you build modern AI apps, but I would submit it's also how you infuse existing apps with AI. So if you're in the B2B space, if you're in the services space, there already is, and there will continue to be a huge opportunity there. I'll just say in the B2B space. Going in, think about all of the different systems that will need to be infused with AI in some way. This is how you will do it. You would do it through that same semantic kernel framework, if you will. So once we built our API, again, that doesn't have to be the chat client that enters the prompt for the human. Here's what I mean by that. One of the things that we're doing that's pretty cool is we're actually looking for indicators in the ERP and in Dynamics, in PeopleSoft, etc. And when an indicator is hit, then we can programmatically work with semantic kernel and send prompts and use that to do other meaningful stuff. So again, if you understood what we went over today, it's not only how you build new apps, commercial or B2B, modern AI apps, but from a B2B perspective, it's also how we infuse all of our line of business applications with AI and connect them to modern AI. Yep. And that's all for tonight. That's a lot of topic. But I can't tell you again how much I appreciate folks being here. It helps. I really enjoy coming here and sharing this stuff, and it helps keep me inspired and motivated a little bit too. So yeah, I can't tell you how much that means to me, because we put a lot of work into this the past 12 months. Like, to tell this story used to take like 6 hours, and now we got it down where we could do it in 20 minutes if we had to, and part of that is actually, being able to bounce ideas off of people. You've been here since day one. We've been talking about this stuff a lot over the past 12 months. Remember when we first started talking about it? He's really good at sniffing out the BS type thing. So he's like, called me crazy the first couple meetings. You have to admit, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Blah, blah. But so that's been really helpful for me, like using you guys as a sounding board and whatnot. I appreciate it. So our next meeting will be in November. And we'll ping everybody on the meetup group and Eventbrite. So, thanks. Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And we'll have a different speaker next time. So we had planned to have a different speaker today, but
It's every 2 weeks, 2 months kind of.
No, it's usually every month. It's every month, but we just have to skip October this month. I'm going to be traveling in Southeast Asia, and I didn't want to put Naveed through that. So we'll just do it when we get back in November. So